Greetings swingers and welcome to episode 6 of the Electro Swing Podcast, brought to you by Electro Swing Thing and hosted by me, Offbeat. In this episode, I'm chatting to Roman Andor, better known to some of you as the person behind the Soulmate Project, as well as one half of the duo, Masha Ray. We talk about his recent album Vinyl Flavours, how one track wound up being used for an ad and gaining over 80 million streams on YouTube, as well as his thoughts on the electro swing scene, including a controversial take on his first encounter with Parov Stella. All this and much, much more, so sit back and enjoy the latest episode of the Electro Swing Podcast. Roman,
hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us, mate. Let's just jump straight into it. So for anyone who might not already be aware of you and your music, can you just give us a little intro into who you are and what it is you do, please?
So I am Roman Andor. I'm more or less the face or the guy behind the Soulmate Project. I have been working as a composer, producer, multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, mixing engineer, amongst several other things for more than 10 years, basically. And yeah, that's pretty much it as a start.
Inside, you think your pains are out of sight. But what if in reality you'd still take them home? Don't wonder about what could have been. Don't worry about your self-esteem. In the end, you only have yourself. Celebrate, embrace the risk. Failure won't be the end of it. The journey is where you will find the truth.
So probably the project that people who are listening to this are most familiar with of yours is the Masha Ray project. So could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
So Masha and I, we actually met at the Pop Academy, the German university in Mannheim. And we then met in a songwriting camp where we both participated in. And there was this yearly thing called, International Songwriting Camp with students from Leeds, Copenhagen, Utrecht, and Chicago. And only like a handful of students from each university were chosen to collaborate. And that's how we got to know each other, and we started working on her project. It was far from being Masha Ray at that point, but we started working on her own project. And the whole electro swing thing was my idea at first. But it worked pretty well with her ideas because she had these like typical polka and rather Eastern European sounding ideas. And we just combined those two, and yeah, it just made sense.
I think a lot of people thought that was a one-person project because it's named after her, right? She features on all of the album covers and the artwork and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You're not very prominent in the sort of marketing for that project. So I didn't really know until I started digging deeper that you were half of that project. So and we're going to talk more about this later, but you're very front and center with the Soulmate Project and with your Roman Andor social media stuff. So you've obviously got no kind of problem being in the limelight and being front and center. So was that like a conscious decision for you to take more of like a background role in this project, or like why is that? Why is it a duo that mainly features her and not you?
I think in hindsight, it should have definitely been a different name. But in the very beginning, we didn't really think of it as a duo. We just wrote a bunch of songs for a live performance exam at uni. And then soon after, gigs followed, and I was basically just assisting as a DJ because she didn't want to perform on her own. And we then just kept going. And the longer the project was actually active, the clearer it became that it was a thing, like of the both of us. I think initially I didn't actually have a problem with that because I thought people will be able to tell that the project is a duo, because if you just spend a couple of minutes, listening to the songs or reading through, reading the biography and stuff, it's pretty obvious, right? But I think I was probably just naive. And at some point it kept repeating. So people and organizers were approaching us and referring to Masha Ray as the singer, like officially, and not the duo. And then we were also like being affiliated with the Jewish Council in Germany. Like we got like several gigs through the Jewish Council. And Masha is Jewish, then I'm not. It seemed like they were also keen on promoting her, kind of like, we have this Jewish musician, and it felt like the whole narrative got changed. So it wasn't about our music anymore, it was about her music. And at times I felt like I was forgotten, and putting like so much work into the project that definitely hurt, yeah.
Yeah. So sadly, you guys seem to be inactive as of 2024. Are we going to see anything from you in the future, or is that definitively over now, that project?
As for today, it absolutely is. It is over. But we also go way back privately. So there were a couple of complications there as well. But we've got all the music out there. Everybody can listen to it. And I think we're both proud of what we've achieved as a duo.
So the project that you're working on now, and which other people also might be more familiar with, is the Soulmate Project. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
So the Soulmate Project basically started as a remix project when I studied music production in London.
When was that? Sorry, just to interrupt you. What
that was actually back in 2013.
Right. So that project's been around for like 12 years or 11 years.
I mean, in the background, yes. Officially,
so it went on the back burner for a bit, but it's been in existence for a while. Okay, because I thought it was brand new when your album came out last year, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So
yes,
sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
So I had too much time on my hands in London, and I discovered a website called Indaba Music, and they were hosting weekly remix competitions from like a bunch of different artists, sometimes up and coming, but also like high profile artists as well. And I needed a name, and prior to my studies in London, I had a couple of musical fragments produced a year prior, basically. And they were hugely influenced by Mark Ronson productions. And I just fell in love with his production style because I could clearly hear the Motown influences in there. And I partly grew up on Motown songs as well. And yeah, and then it just hit me, the Soulmate Project. And I don't know, because with all the musical influences that I got from home, like the 70s dance music, the disco, funk stuff, bands such as Kool and the Gang, and those by now they sound very dated, but back then, those like semi-orchestrated pop songs, like from the 50s, 60s, 70s, they really had an impact on my musical taste and my style as well. And then also the word soulmate. I mean, you have the word soul in there, right? So kind of like preserving the closeness to the soul genre, but also a soulmate as something we all long for. And I think musically speaking, that idea is just beautiful. Oh, the Soulmate Project. So it should touch you at the very core.
So you feature a number of vocalists on the album, but you also feature on it yourself as well, because you can sing in addition to all of the other things that you do. So I'm intrigued to learn more about that, because there's a couple of tracks where you sing in one voice, and then at least one other track where you sing in a completely different voice. So the track I'm thinking of in particular is Be Yourself. And I remember seeing a video on, I think it was TikTok, where you say when the face doesn't match the voice. And I was really surprised by that, because the voice sounds really like ethereal and like a bit almost like haunting and fantastical. And then you appear, and I was like, he's right. The face does not match the voice. I was not expecting that face. So, but that's the voice that appears on 2 of the songs, and then a different track, the one about hormones, very different voice.
Maximize your hormones.
Maximize your hormones. Yeah, very, very different voice. So is the Be Yourself voice, is that your natural singing voice, or are they all?
No.
Okay.
As you've seen a couple of my TikTok clips, some of that is also about impersonating different singers. And I think I always call it the vintage voice. The voice
The Be
that I
Yourself
used for the
voice.
Soulmate Project.
Yeah.
The Be Yourself voice. And it's almost like playing a character. It's a very specific voice. I wouldn't necessarily say it's unique, but it was like clearly influenced by. Have you ever heard of the comedian harmonists? I think there was a German combo, like a quartet from the 1920s, and they were singing like all these like a cappella, almost like a barbershop thing before barbershop was a thing. And I think that's kind of the voice that I'm going for.
Okay.
And besides, there's also this German singer called Max Rabe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever
Can't say I have, I'm
no?
afraid. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
And he's been very popular for the last 20 years. So I partly grew up on him as well, listening to some of his music. And he used to cover like the comedian harmonist repertoire and some very funny songs. And he used to sing more or less in the same style. And I remember when Be Yourself was released, there were a couple of YouTube comments, and one of them was, I think, an American woman kind of like stating the same thing, like, "Oh, he reminds me of Max Rabe," and makes sense.
Okay, cool. It definitely sounds like an authentic, like 1920s voice. When I hear it, it sounds super appropriate for that genre of music and like electro swing, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my approach. But it's also like a very soft voice, and almost like this crooning approach, because back then microphones used to be like super sensitive, so you really had to level everything down. You couldn't use your voice properly. You couldn't sing like an opera singer. That would have kind of like destroyed the whole microphone, so you really had to tone everything down.
So on the topic of that song, Be Yourself, that was picked up for an ad, wasn't it? For a huge company called Hanwha. And currently that video of their advert on YouTube, which I'll include in the description if people want to go and check it out, has over 52 million views, which is, I feel like I have to do that almost when I say a number that big, which is incredibly impressive, man. And congratulations for landing that. So I'm super intrigued how that came about.
It's actually 80 million in total if you count the Korean version as well. I think the English version has 52, and the Korean one, it's kind of like the same clip just with a Korean voiceover, has around 30. Yes.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. That was amazing, but also like completely unexpected. And do you remember me saying this thing about the hybrid concept in production music where I've given the publishing and sync rights to production music company, etc. So I get the best of both worlds, but there might be scheduling problems. And in the case of Be Yourself, the song was actually available for clients on the platform, but it wasn't released commercially, meaning people couldn't actually find the song because the song wasn't listed. So they were like, "Oh, this song is amazing, but I can't find it anywhere. Why isn't it on Spotify?"
Which answers a question that I had, because it's not got that many streams. It's like it's got a decent number of streams on Spotify, but it's not your most streamed song. Which for a track that's been featured on a video with 50 million views or 80 million views, I would have thought you'd have crazy numbers on that Spotify track. So that explains that.
I would have hoped so as well, and that was definitely kind of unfortunate. But I actually just found out about the placement by accident because I was, of course, Googling my own name. And I think Be Yourself was pretty much on top of the search results.
Right.
So that got me
So they
thinking
don't tell
like,
you when you get a placement like that. They don't even tell you.
no, but so basically I have this publisher taking care of sync rights, but most of the publishers have sub-publishers in various territories. And in that case, Warner Chappell had a sub-publisher for the Asian market. And I remember talking to the A&R who's responsible for managing my repertoire. And I told him, I was like, hey man, do you know what I just found out? My song was used in this, so why didn't you tell me? And he was like, oh, really? Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know about
they
that.
didn't even know
Oh, they must
themselves.
have been our sub-publisher.
Yeah,
Well, I don't want to say thanks for nothing, but you know, I could have handled it completely, could have handled it differently if I just known beforehand. So basically, I found out 3 months later. So I think the ad actually aired in December 2023, and I found out in February actually, February 2024. And I think it took another 4 weeks to, get the proper release through the Electro Swing thing, through Wolfgang's label. And unfortunately, I couldn't really get through to the people to lead them, to bring them over to Spotify. And even though most of the comments
almost
on,
every comment, mate, is people talking about the music.
yeah, nobody
Yeah,
actually talked about the ad. They were all just like, "Oh, that music
yeah,
is amazing. Is the
yeah.
artist blah?" And yeah, ironically, also most of my comments, because I was trying to tell people, it's this and this song. It just got released, and most of my comments actually got blocked on YouTube.
It's like spam because they thought it was.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, mate.
if things worked out differently, it might have also become a huge TikTok thing then. Kind of like leading all the people from YouTube to TikTok. People might have used it. I'm pretty sure people in Korea, I don't know if all of the listeners were Korean, but there were a couple of other uploads as well, like private uploads, and most of them were indeed Korean. And I'm pretty sure people in Korea would have just used that on TikTok.
So,
Yeah.
did you get paid like a fee for that as well, or is it like that song belonged to a library and they pay a subscription for that library and then they just use whatever they want?
I don't actually know. That's the
Okay,
thing.
okay. Because you could be owed a ton of money for that, I'm assuming.
That's what I thought. There was also actually my first the first impression that I got, like seeing all those streams. I thought like, okay, I mean, even on
Yeah,
Spotify, if you
yeah.
have like 50 million streams, that's still good money,
That's money.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm the only composer on this, so I don't have to share my part with anyone else. There's only like the publishing share that I need to deduct basically. Generally, it might actually take a couple of years for the whole copyright collection to take place. So I'm still hoping for a good amount of money, or at least like getting this like lucky surprise from the royalty system, because I normally don't know how much money I will get. But I'm still hoping for more.
Yeah.
I'm still hoping for more, yes.
Well, fingers crossed, mate. And if anyone's listening or watching who knows the answer to this or can help, then please feel free to reach out to either myself or Roman.
Yeah. Please
And
talk
if
to
you,
me.
yeah.
Please let me know.
So I'd like to move on now to a section about kind of social media, because you've got the Masha Ray project, you've got the Soulmate project, but then you also have your own kind of like, I guess, personal profile or solo profile as Roman Andor, which you've got profiles across all of the major platforms. But particularly TikTok, like you've got a strong following on TikTok, doing kind of rearrangements or covers of popular songs in different styles, which are really fun to watch. And you've had some success with those as well, right? You've got videos with millions of views on there. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how did that come about, and what are your thoughts on all that?
I think it all started during COVID by having too much time on my hands. Especially at the beginning, people just didn't know what to do, especially artists all around the world, musicians as well, because they couldn't play gigs. They couldn't, meet any other people, like couldn't go to like networking events whatsoever. And so they just started to upload social media clips, or just generally trying to connect with or to people through social media. And I think I was just trying to do something similar because I saw like so many awesome clips from like very talented musicians, and some of them like really struck a chord with me. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's something I want to do. I just want to, I just want to have fun. I just want to do something where I know I'm actually good at. So that's where the whole idea with the arrangements came from, because that's something I just really like doing. But also, on the edge of like doing something funny, having like some comedic relief in it as well. And so I just started, I think it must have been like 2021, and then I slowly built up the channel, like uploading videos regularly. And then it actually culminated in a couple of viral moments in
Mm.
2023 on TikTok mainly.
Mhm.
Not really on Instagram, but I don't know.
They're kind
I
of
feel
different
like the whole.
audiences, aren't they? And different algorithms as
Mm,
well. But like, I find
dif-
that my stuff that does well on TikTok often doesn't do well on Instagram and vice versa. I do feel like they're different people.
I feel like with the stuff that I was interested in and the clips that I actually followed, it was pretty similar. And I also feel like a couple of there's a certain like video approach, or a certain concept of recording videos that works really well on both platforms. But yeah, generally I've always felt like I've even thought about deleting my Instagram profile because I feel like it's just not worth doing anymore.
Right.
With TikTok, it's something entirely different, but I also have to say, and kind of like, going back to the question with social media, until this day, so this day we're having this interview right now, I still haven't gone back to posting
Right.
properly because I
From
I actually
from when?
from
Like, when did you
basically
stop?
summer 2023. Yeah, a year and a half. It's a lot of work. That can be It makes you feel like really ungrateful, and it's absurd how much algorithms actually decide over what's worth to be boosted or distributed. And I don't know, it often left me like feeling annoyed or exhausted. And not to mention the dynamics of social media comments, which can really, really get to you
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
even if you don't know the person. But especially I feel like it's actually gotten worse and worse over the years. It's quite interesting though, because I feel like I've got this like love-hate relationship with social media. And
Mm.
I know people tell me, oh yeah, you're so comfortable doing stuff in front of the camera, but I had to get there,
Yeah.
because at
Yeah.
some point I felt like there wasn't any other alternative when it comes to like market your own music or to reach people. It's all about social media nowadays and algorithms. And even like 10 years ago, it was an entirely different situation, right? People nowadays, you rely on social media. And yeah, you better have to get comfortable on social media showing your face all the time. But it's not something that I like originally did for fun. Definitely not. And I also don't need this type of like recognition or this type of, confidence boosting, getting attention from like random people. In a perfect world, it would just be about the music,
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
any typical social media stuff.
So I want to chat about electro swing as a genre a little bit, because I know, yeah, you're not exclusively an electro swing artist, but your album has come out on electro swing thing, and there's a lot of electro swing songs in there. So
So it must be electro swing, yeah.
exactly, yeah, get in that box. So how did you first discover electro swing?
I think it must have been 2012 when I went to a Parastella concert.
Oh, awesome! Oh, mate, what a great first
In
experience.
Yeah, I even though I wasn't really impressed, to be honest. But
Really?
that might be part of my background. So
Okay,
back then, yeah, I'm just being honest here. So I didn't fall in love with like Parastella or the genre
cool.
in
You're
itself.
you're you're the first person to say that, so
Really?
I'm definitely keeping it in.
I mean, no, no, no.
Let's have
He's
some
amazing,
controversy on the
obviously, and
podcast.
and no, he deserves like all the praise. I mean, you know he's successful for a variety of reasons, and he was also one of the first to actually establish the genre as a whole. I think back then I wasn't really into that type of mix in general. So I was like, the concert was nice, I think I was a bit irritated by the whole DJ thing because I was like, okay, it's him, but he's not actually doing much. And there were also like they used so many backing tracks, so they had like this saxophone player and the trumpet player, but I could clearly hear like trumpet and saxophone samples from the backing track, right? And I think back then there was like prior to me being like a proper producer, so I was just listening to it from a different perspective. And over the years, I obviously came back to Stella as well. And I think
It
my
got you in the
favorite
end.
band, yeah, but I think my favorite band from the genre used to be Caravan Palace, even though they wouldn't necessarily classify themselves as electro swing, right?
Cool answer. Like, yeah, definitely. You're the first. I mean, you still said Power of Stella, which everyone says for that question,
I'm
but you said it in a different way. You
just
flipped it.
waiting. I'm just waiting for the hate comments here.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm ready. No.
So, what are your current thoughts on the electro swing scene at the moment?
I mean, it seems like at least on Spotify, the scene is like thriving. And probably going back to the Stella experience, generally I find it interesting that most people in the scene, they do come from a rather electronic background, right? Not necessarily jazz or something like, vintage music or like funk whatsoever. And I also think for the most part, you can clearly hear that how in the production, so how people treat instruments, how they treat samples as well. And I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a jazz guy. I mean, not by definition, but I'm again coming from the arranger's side of things and the arranger's perspective with my musical education and influences. And sometimes I feel a bit, I don't want to say lonely or on my own, but I do feel that I might approach things differently than most of the other people in the genre. Yeah.
Okay,
It's just,
interesting.
just an observation. Like,
Yeah, another potentially controversial one. Nah, I mean, that leads on to my next question a little bit, which is there anything you change about the scene as it stands?
I think there might also be a bit of pressure from the Spotify editorial playlist because I don't really care about the genre, to be honest. To me, it's more about the vibe and the musical ideas. And I don't know if you recall the Femme Jolie song, the Soulmate Project song with Veronique.
One of the ones on your album, yeah?
Yeah, the only connection to electro swing in that song seems to be like the 4 to the floor beat, like the 120 BPM rhythm, and that's kind of like the only connection I would draw to electro swing. And I feel like if you stray from the typical electro swing sound and even having like a bunch of like monthly listeners, you will then not be included in the actual Spotify editorial playlist. And I think during the Halloween edition of the Spotify editorial playlist, my collab with Wolfgang Law, like the remix of Ghostbusters, was included. But prior to that, I think I had like a period of probably even a year when none of my releases were actually making it into the playlist. And I wasn't the only one. There were like, I think Balduin as well. They had like a couple of bangers, and none of their tracks were actually included in the playlist. And that felt super weird. Also, I feel like over the last year or two, the whole playlist has like shifted to a more traditional electro swing style. But that all sounds, I feel like all the tracks in there more or less sound the same then. So it's kind of like upbeat swing with the same chord progressions or bass lines and kind of like trying to emulate this typical like, electro swing with like 20s or 30s type samples. But not necessarily keeping it, more interesting or fresher.
So you also produce for other artists as well, and most recently, or certainly most recently for me that I've heard, Sonia Elisheva's track, "Wish You Weren't So Good to Me," which I love, mate. I think that's such a banger. And
Well, thank you.
yeah,
We're
really.
also
Like,
very happy with the track, like Sonia and I, and how
yeah,
it
she
turned
sounds great
out.
on it as well. But as a whole, the track is fantastic, I think. So have you produced tracks like that for other artists? And are there any that people listening might know, either in the electro swing world or beyond?
I mean, technically, I've done several remixes or collabs with, and for like the Little Mishka Band, Wolfgang Law, Ashley Slater, Alice Francis as well as a couple of remixes as Romsen. That used to be my alias for lots of like pop and urban productions. But over the years, I realized that I wanted to rebrand that project, that alias, and now I only use it for my vision of cinematic music. So a lot of like production music in like cinematic styles, where I can just, be myself without having like, I don't know, creative limits. Um, with with Sonia, I have collaborated on 4 tracks of our upcoming
Okay,
album.
right.
And two of them have already seen the light. The first one was Dark Eyes.
I didn't know that you
Uh,
produced that. Okay, cool.
oh
Another
yeah.
banger.
So there
Yeah.
was. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I think Dark Eyes is actually one of my favorite productions, and I could also, add so many instruments to that. There's like the cello is very prominent, the electric guitar as well, playing that like classical Eastern European melody as well, and balalaikas as well in the background. Probably so many details you can't really pick up just by first listening session. You're just like, okay, yeah, it sounds nice, but I don't actually know what's in there.
And certainly if
But
you're
I
not
really,
a musician as well, because I think a lot of people, myself included, because I don't play any instruments, so I just hear like a nice sound. I don't necessarily pick apart the different bits and know what they all are. So yeah, there's probably a lot of layers there that you've added that people won't
yeah,
necessarily
absolutely.
be aware of. They just
Because
hear the finished product.
it's something that I will probably talk about later as well. I always come like from the arranging side of things, because you have like so many options in like musical color as well, coloring the sound of your arrangement. And if you combine like 2 instruments playing the same lines, this might actually sound completely different than using, I don't know, like, for instance, if we layer, I've done that in one of the other tracks for Sonia. I've layered strings with a balalaika. And I think Nick from Freshly Squeezed was then like asking if it was, I don't know, a very specific instrument I had never heard about. And he was like, oh, is it that one? And I was like, no. I, I don't actually know what you mean. And then I was just like trying to explain. I think you refer to the balalaika string layering there. So it's super interesting because if you combine a couple of instruments in a smart way of arranging, it might just sound like something entirely different, even like a different instrument as well. I think
Interesting.
that's where the fun is for me.
So that was episode 6 of the Electro Swing Podcast with Roman Andor, the man behind the Soulmate Project. If you haven't already, go and check out that and his other many projects in the links listed in the description. And of course, if you haven't already followed us, please do so at Electro Swing Podcast on all major platforms. As always, please let me know what you think in the comments and who you'd like to see me interview next. And I'll be back in another 2 weeks with another episode of the Electro Swing Podcast.